The regular season race for Super Bowl 58 is about to enter its final heat this weekend as we get into Week 18. Welcome into NFL Daily by Chat Sports. Matthew Peterson here, outlining the NFL playoff picture through the NFC and the AFC. We'll run through all the teams currently in the mix and those are on the outside looking in. And then we're going to wrap up our video by looking at my NFC and AFC projections. But let's get started with the NFC first. We'll break down all these teams one by one. A handful have already clinched, but a lot of teams still have a lot to play for in Week 18. The Cowboys, the Lions, the Bucs, the Eagles, the Packers, all jockeying for either a playoff spot or playoff seeding. But let's get started with the San Francisco 49ers, who have clinched the number 1 seed. They have a bye during Wild Card Weekend. The 11th time the team in the Bay Area has secured the number 1 seed, and they're going to take on the Rams at home in what's basically a meaningless game for seeding implications for both teams. The Rams cannot go up or down. That is why they are playing Carson Wentz. And then the 49ers cannot go down, so they are resting their starters. We're going to see Sam Darnold. We're going to see a lot of the backups. And ultimately, I don't think this is a very close game, a very competitive game. I think it's a bit of a coin flip when you get all the backups in. But I'll take the Rams, who have been very hot, to maybe surprise the 49ers, who are going to be resting all their guys and are probably looking ahead a little bit to the first round of the playoffs when they come back in the divisional round. Meanwhile, the Dallas Cowboys, they have plenty to play for on Sunday. For them, it is very simple. Win and you are the number 2 seed, but they also have a little bit of help just in case they lose to the Commanders, because if Philadelphia and Detroit lose in Week 18, the Cowboys clinch the number 2 seed. So it's win and you're number 2, but it's also lose and you're not completely out of it. Now, a win for Mike McCarthy would secure a 3rd straight season with 12 wins. And going to the Commanders, Dak Prescott has dominated the division in a lot of ways. I think we're going to see Dallas win this game against Washington, and the Cowboys are going to be the number 2 seed, and they are going to have a home playoff game in Wild Card Weekend. Meanwhile, the Detroit Lions are currently the number 3 seed. Now, they can clinch the number 2 seed with a win against the Vikings and Philly and Dallas lose. You need both those NFC East teams to lose. If either one wins, it doesn't matter what Detroit does. They cannot get the 2 seed. But what I can guarantee you is the Lions will be hosting a playoff game in Wild Card Weekend, the first time since 1994. They will be going up against a Vikings team that has a very, very slim chance of making the playoffs. And with all the just quarterback carousel going on in Minnesota, I think the Lions are going to take care of business at home. Moving on to the number 4 seed, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for now. It's very simple for Baker Mayfield and company. They clinch the number 4 seed. They guarantee a home playoff game with a win against the 2-win Carolina Panthers. But even if they do not win, there's still a slight chance they can clinch the division. They would need to tie against the Panthers and have the Saints lose or tie. But for the Bucs, it's really simple. Win and you are in. You control your own destiny. Now, they do have a very outside chance of also getting a wild card spot. That one's a lot more confusing. They clinch a wild card spot with a tie and then a Seattle loss and a Packers loss or tie. But ultimately, I think the Bucs are going to take care of business at home against the Panthers. I've got Tampa Bay winning this game and hosting a playoff game against the Philadelphia Eagles, who are the number 5 seed, and they do not control their own destiny. They would clinch the number 2 seed with a win or tie against the Giants and a Cowboys loss. Now, Dallas plays the Commanders, a team that has been spiraling downhill for the last month or so, and the Eagles have been doing, well, not what we expected them to do going into the final month of the season, which would be playing their best football. Instead, they've been playing some of their worst football. However, they have been playing great football over the last couple of years. They have clinched a playoff appearance for 6 out of the last 7 straight years. And ultimately, I do think they pick up a win against the Giants on the road. But unfortunately for Philly fans, they do not control their own destiny. And I've got the Cowboys winning at Washington. So the Eagles would get the number 5 seed in this scenario. But let me know who gets the number 2 seed. Cowboys, Eagles, or Lions, right? Cowboys win and you're the number 2 seed. Eagles win and Dallas loses and you're the number 2 seed. Lions is win and the Eagles and Cowboys lose and Detroit would be the number 2 seed? Get in the comment section right now. Scroll on down. It's the pinned comment and let me know. Let's talk wildcard teams right now, starting with the LA Rams, or following the Eagles with the LA Rams now, who are locked into the number 6 seed. They cannot go up or down. They have nothing to play for seeding-wise, but Sean McVay has done a tremendous job this season. You can count me as a non-believer back in August. I didn't think the Rams would be in the playoffs, but they put it together in the second half of the year. And for the 5th time under Sean McVay's tenure, they will be going to the playoffs. They are going to the 49ers in what is basically a meaningless game for both teams in Week 18. And I think the Rams, who are the hot team right now, are going to get it done. Moving on to the current number 7 seed, the Green Bay Packers. For the Packers, it's similar to the Bucs, but it's a little bit more complicated. They are simply win and in, right? If they beat their rival, the Chicago Bears, on Sunday, they clinch the number 7 seed. But if they were to lose to the Bears, they would not be completely out of it. There would be a lot of combinations of losing between Seattle, New Orleans, Tampa Bay, and Minnesota that could help the Packers somehow slip into the playoffs despite being 8-9. Those combinations are very long and honestly very confusing. So for Green Bay, it's pretty simple. Win, and you're in. Now, a loss for the Packers would give the Packers fan base their first back-to-back their third back-to-back losing season since 1990. Ultimately, I think the Bears are going to surprise Green Bay up in the frozen tundra. I've got Chicago winning in Week 18. Now, there are a couple of teams still in the hunt. The Seattle Seahawks, they play the Arizona Cardinals. If they win and the Packers lose, Seattle's in. The New Orleans Saints would win the division if they win and the Buccaneers lose. Same goes for the Atlanta Falcons. The Saints also could get a wild card spot if New Orleans wins, Green Bay loses, and Seattle loses, and New Orleans were to jump into the mix. The Falcons, they need a win against New Orleans, and they need the Buccaneers to lose to the Panthers. And then Atlanta would be the number 4 seed in the NFC. And then Minnesota, don't get me started. They can't win the division. Their only path is the wild card spot. They need everyone above them to pretty much lose, but you've got the Saints playing the Falcons, so it makes things a little extra hairy. So Vikings fans, don't hold your breath. But honestly, if you want to go down a deep, dark rabbit hole of ways Minnesota can make the playoffs, power to you. Now, before we get to the AFC side of things, I do want to give a shout out to our sponsor today, which is Prize Picks. Thanks to Prize Picks, I've had an absolute blast watching football this year, as I always do, but it was a little extra sweet this year because I was making up to 25 times my money in the process. Here's how Prize Picks works. You select 2 to 6 players and then pick more or less on their projected stats. So for Week 18, what is a playoff game for the Texans, I'm going to fade the rookie C.J. Stroud and go with the less on 270.5 passing yards. I like the more on Drake London and Bijan Robinson's yardage, though, because the Falcons are also hanging on to a very slim playoff chance. So I think Arthur Smith will go to his star players. And then Jonathan Taylor for the Colts, also in a playoff game, essentially. I think the Colts are going to pound the rock. So I like the more on Jonathan Taylor. If you like my selections, feel free to ride with me over at prizepicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS for a first-time deposit match up to $100. That link is in the comments and description of today's video. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. Let's talk AFC right now, where the Ravens have nothing to play for. They are the number 1 seed. No ifs, ands, nor buts about it. The Dolphins and Jags and Bills and Colts and Texans and Steelers, though, they all have something to play for. However, the Chiefs and the Browns are locked into their respective seeds. But let's start top to bottom again, beginning with the Baltimore Ravens, who have clinched the number 1 seed for the second time. I didn't think that number would be so low in franchise history. They are going to be sitting a lot of their starters as they play the Pittsburgh Steelers on a Saturday game. So the Steelers, who we'll get to later on, have a lot to play for. But the Ravens, they can't go up or down in the playoff seeding. So they're going to be giving their guys 2 weeks of rest, right? This Week 18 matchup and Wild Card weekend when Baltimore would have their bye. I ultimately believe that even with Tyler Huntley starting for the Ravens, he can take down Mason Rudolph. Does anyone really think Mason Rudolph is all that much better than Huntley? Now, as for the other guys sitting for Baltimore, that could be a big difference maker, but the Ravens have been dominant this year. I think they're going to end the year on a high note. Moving on to the current number 2 seed, and keyword is current because this could change, the Miami Dolphins. It's very simple for Miami. Win against the Bills on Sunday Night Football, and you are the number 2 seed. And it will be the first time since 1992 the Dolphins would have finished with a 1 or 2 seed spot. I believe that they are going to get the win against the Bills. I know the Dolphins have been frauds against playoff caliber teams, but the Bills have also been fraudulent for stretches this year. They've kind of figured it out lately, but I think the Dolphins at home will be too much to handle for Josh Allen and the Bills. Give me Miami to get the number 2 seed. Moving on to the Kansas City Chiefs, who for the first time since 2017 will not be the 1 or 2 seed. They are locked in at the number 3 seed. They are playing their backups. No Patrick Mahomes in Week 18. They are going to the Chargers, who usually when you see a team fire their coach, there's a little bit of a boost, right? Go ask Antonio Pierce about that. Go ask the Matt Rule Carolina Panthers last year about that, but not this year for the Chargers. Despite firing Brandon Staley, there has been no boost. I think the Chiefs are going to get the win here. They cannot go up or down no matter what happens on Sunday, though. They are stuck at number 3. The Jags are hanging on to a playoff spot by a thread, but they have a very simple path for hosting a playoff game. They clinch the number 4 seed with a win against the Tennessee Titans in Week 18. Now, they also have a very outside shot of getting a wild card spot, which would be if they were to lose to the Titans, well, they would clinch the number 7 seed with Pittsburgh and Denver losing, Steelers playing the Ravens, Broncos playing the Raiders, plus the Colts and Texans game does not end in a tie. So if the Jags were to lose, well, they would hope that on Saturday the Steelers lost, and then they would need the Broncos to lose to the Raiders. Denver has lost 7 straight against Las Vegas. They have not beaten the Raiders since they moved to Las Vegas. And then they just don't need that 1% chance of a tie in the Colts-Texans game. Ultimately, I think Jacksonville is going to lose. Mike Vrabel is a very good head coach. His team, I thought, would have won a couple of games the last couple of weeks to end the year on a high note. But the Jags are bleeding. There is blood in the water, and I think the Titans are going to jump all over that. I've got the Titans ending the year with the win, and the Jags, well, they're going to be in wild card hell if that's the case. Moving on to the wild card team, starting with the Cleveland Browns. That's right, the Cleveland Browns at 11-5, who, by the way, swept the entire AFC South. They are locked in at the number 5 seed, and no matter what, they are playing the AFC South champion the following wild card weekend. It's the second playoff appearance under Kevin Stefanski. First time a Browns head coach has taken the team to the playoffs twice since Marty Schottenheimer back in the late 1980s. And ultimately, they are playing a Bengals team that has nothing to play for. They have been eliminated from the postseason. So how about Jeff Driscoll, who's going to be the 5th starting quarterback for the Browns this year, getting a win for Cleveland? The Browns are sitting Joe Flacco. They're going to be resting a lot of their guys. And the Bengals, they've got nothing but pride to play for, which is a much more powerful thing than people realize in Week 18. But I'll take the Browns to get their first 12-win season in decades. Number 6 seed, the Buffalo Bills. They can go all the way to the top pretty much or all the way out of the playoff picture. For Bills, it's very simple. Win against the Miami Dolphins, and you just jump all the way to the number 2 spot. However, they can clinch a wild card spot. If they lose to Miami, they would need the following things to happen. They need a loss, which they don't want, but also a Pittsburgh loss or tie against the Ravens. Again, that game's on Saturday. Or the Jags lose or tie to the Titans, which I think is going to happen, or the Colts and Texans game ends in a tie. So ultimately, if the Bills were to lose, they could go into Sunday Night Football knowing we are in no matter what if Pittsburgh lost or Jacksonville lost, because no way those teams could jump over the 10-win Buffalo Bills, even with a Bills loss on Sunday Night Football. So we might have a situation that's eerily similar to Week 18 last year. Remember when the Packers played the Lions on Sunday night, but the Seahawks won earlier, so Detroit was eliminated from the playoffs. This could be a game which it could mean a lot for Buffalo, where they could win and be the number 2 seed, but they also might have already clinched a playoff spot even with a loss. As for the current number 7 seed in the AFC, the Indianapolis Colts did not see this one coming this year. They clinch the number 4 seed with a win against the Texans on Saturday. These two teams are playing on Saturday, plus a Jacksonville loss. So the Colts do not control their own destiny, and it's the same for the Houston Texans. You could just swap everything out for Houston. The Houston Texans clinched the number 4 seed with a win against Indianapolis and a Jacksonville loss. Now, they also clinch a wild card spot with a win against the Texans. However, the Texans, their only chance is to get a division title. They cannot get a wild card spot. I ultimately believe the Indianapolis Colts are going to defeat the Houston Texans, and they are going to clinch a playoff spot, whether that is a wild card position or the AFC South. But let me know, who do you think is going to win the AFC South? The Jags, the Colts, or the Texans? I think everyone thought that going into this season, it would be Jacksonville by a mile and the rest of the division was going to suck. But give credit to Shane Steichen and DeMeco Ryans. The Colts and the Texans have played very well this year, and they have put themselves in a position to at least be in contention in Week 18. Now, the in the hunt teams for the AFC, it's a lot smaller than the NFC. You've got the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Houston Texans. For the Texans, it is they have to win, and they need a little help from Jacksonville. As for Pittsburgh, it's a lot more complicated. The Pittsburgh Steelers, ladies and gentlemen, they need the following to happen. Steelers win and the Bills lose, or Steelers win and the Jags lose or tie, or Steelers win and Colts-Texans ends in a tie. So of those three right there, I think the most likely outcome is Steelers win and Bills lose to the Dolphins, right? That's not asking a whole lot, especially with the Ravens playing their backups. However, there is even a remote possibility the Steelers make the playoffs with a loss against the Ravens on Saturday. Even with the Steelers' loss, if the Colts and Texans game does not end in a tie and Jacksonville loses and Denver wins, the Pittsburgh Steelers, through not even common opponents, we're talking win percentage for opposition, would somehow sneak into that playoff spot. So ultimately, here are my predictions for the NFC and the AFC. In the NFC, the 49ers have already clinched the number 1 seed. I think the Cowboys are going to win and take the number 2 spot. I think the Lions are going to win, but they cannot move up as a result. I think the Bucs are going to take down the Panthers. The Eagles are going to win. The Rams are stuck at 6. And I think the Saints are going to win. And despite the Buccaneers winning as well, I think with the Packers losing and the Seahawks losing to the very hot Arizona Cardinals team that just beat the Philadelphia Eagles last week, with those two teams losing, Green Bay and Seattle, New Orleans would slip into the number 7 spot in the wild card race. As for the AFC, we've got the Ravens stuck at number 1. I believe the Dolphins are going to win and take the number 2 spot. Chiefs are stuck at 3. I think the Colts are going to win, and they are going to move all the way up to 4 because I've got the Jags losing to the Titans. And then I've got the Browns stuck at 5. The Bills would stay at 6 despite the loss. And then the Jags would actually slip into 7 because I've got the Steelers losing, and that would knock out Pittsburgh from the playoff race. So the Jags, despite ending the year on a sour note, just like last year, they play the Titans when Tennessee's got a lot to play for, but Jacksonville didn't. Well, who won that game? Jacksonville. It's the reverse this year, and this time I think the Titans are going to play spoiler to the Jags, but lucky Jacksonville because I've got the Steelers losing to the Ravens, knocking them out of the postseason. So, did we get all that? Did you write it all down? Enjoy Week 18, and we'll see you all once the wild card weekend gets underway.